Guys, I know every day we wake up in this reality and Gypsy Gyp is on our television screen and on our cell phone and on Lifetime and on TMZ and getting more media attention than freaking Sabrina Carpenter. We feel like we're in the Twilight Zone. And the first question we all ask is, how the is she getting all this media attention? How the freak is she so famous? How did she get out of prison and then all of a sudden she butt dials TMZ and they cover any story? They cover her freaking trophy tattoos, you guys. Like it was the biggest news on the planet. Like she's some freaking reality star. I mean, like she's Paris Hilton or something and just got engaged. I mean, it's bizarre to me. And then I want to throw up in my mouth when I hear the Kardashians sitting and talking like on their episode and they're like, oh, we just can't wait to watch all of Gypsy's series. You know, because Kim's about to meet. My goodness, what does Kim think now? Like she let herself meet Gyp because their things were aligned. But now that she's met Gyp and the Gyp stain has now reached Kim K, the stink just follows her everywhere. Kim K's now got the stink. And the public's looking at Kim K like, well, now all your advocacy work looks like a joke. And then now here's, little Gyp copying every little thing you do. Trying to be Kim K for a while, even saying every outfit she puts on is Kim K vibes. And yes, I am going to do a series on her freaking outfits. And those boots are so 2002. I mean, has she looked at a fashion magazine in the last 20 years? So, I don't want to dog. Listen, I am always one to be honest. Like, I remember there was this one lady who was in a shop once, and she came up to me and she was like, oh, do you like my earrings? And because this was a shop I actually really liked, and she must have overheard me saying I like the artist. And she came up to me and asked me, and I was like, well, those specific ones, they're okay. But like, I couldn't like lie to her face, And I remember the lady was off put by that. But that particular jewelry she had on had like, it didn't match the style of all the other objects that I had liked. I don't know. It was a different, maybe it came from the same artist, but like way earlier in their career. I don't know. But I just, there's a part of me where I'm going to tell it like it is with Gyp. I'm going to be fair. I will say that there are parts of her story where there was possibly a victimization, like when she was younger, and she says that something may have happened with her grandpa. But do you know how many people in the world have trauma? Do you know how many women alone in the United States have trauma? It's more than 75% of women have trauma. And you don't see them like basically ending your mom's life is extremely rare. Matriarch, I can't even say it right because of my cold right now. Like basically ending your mom's life. Okay, there's a term for it, but my cold, like everything with the M just sounds ridiculous. So it's extremely rare. It's less than 1% of all cases against family members. Like, and it's even more rare with women. Like usually it's men who have schizophrenia. So ending your mom's life is so rare that it's almost always people with schizophrenia and usually males. It's never someone who has no mental illness. Like that's literally not a thing. So with Gypsy's case, I know many of us are looking at her like, okay, she's definitely got some stank. She's got some stuff. But she hasn't been like, I don't think she's been formally diagnosed with like, that. But in my opinion, she's a full-bred psychopath. This is my personal opinion. And to the point that even people who are very narcissistic in Hollywood, Gypsy, her ego is a billion times brighter than, J-Lo's was during the whole Ben Benifer movie tour that happened last year. And the whole saga of, basically unraveling J-Lo's career because she looked like, this billionaire trying to be relatable and it wasn't relatable. I mean, they really missed the mark on the marketing there. But like Gyp's ego is like, get that and then magnify it with like a massive EMP. That's Gyp's ego. But there's no career behind it. There's no talent behind it. And this is why I think, okay, so do you remember when like Dee passed away? But there were so many pictures of Dee when she was alive, and she would have this camera and it would hang on her. It was like this black camera, had a strap and everything, big old camera. And it was like the old fashioned kind where you like print the film. You could take like hundreds of pictures. Well, like Gyp, here's the crazy thing. When I was looking at the items that Gyp had when cops found her, like, and they unpacked everything, it was like not when she's in the room with the interrogations. Like after that, they took pictures. And like that camera was there, you guys. She took that camera that her mom had and then brought it with her along with those handcuffs. So like these little mini handcuffs. So I thought like, how odd that she brought that camera with her, right? But I know why she brought that camera with her. Well, the obvious reason could be their most recent trip to Disneyland in Cape Cod, right? Her celebrity Disney event could have been on that camera. Maybe it hadn't been printed yet. But why this camera? Why did Dee bring this camera everywhere? And then it hit me. It hit me like a brick. You see, when Gypsy was 13, 14, her motivation for leaving the bayou was, I want a life of luxury. And I don't want a life of working hard like my mom is. So she tells her mom this, and I don't know how she convinces her mom to leave everything behind, but maybe Hurricane Katrina helped with that, because when Hurricane Katrina happened, a lot of funding was being handed out. And now Gypsy's family, they had money. I mean, trawling boats cost, if I was going to go to Louisiana right now, because I already looked it up, and I wanted to buy a trawling boat from 1991, a used one, it would cost me $800,000, just shy of $1 million. So trawling boats are expensive. And I mean, I don't know how expensive her grandpa's was, but they had some money, but they just put it into the shrimping, and they didn't live a life of luxury, right? It was a life of hard work and stability, but hard work. So Dee leaves with Hurricane Katrina. A lot of funding is put out, gives her the opportunity to relocate, even though she doesn't have a career. They relocate to Missouri, Aurora, Missouri. And we got to wonder, like, who picked that specific place? Was it Gyp? Like, was she already planning this? I don't know. But is it just convenient that it's Aurora? I don't know. But I think it's odd that around this time that they move, Aurora Rose that's when she became really big as a romance novelist. And she was on the New York bestsellers list like year after year. So that kind of, it's around the same time that Gypsy's coming into being a teenager and probably started reading romance novels. And then there's the bestseller, which is Aurora Rose. And then, maybe, I'm just saying hypothetically, maybe Gyp saw Aurora on the list and she's like, I want that. Because she was already reading Aurora Rose, probably. Most teenagers were at that time. So here's what I think is weird. So they leave, they go to Missouri, but it was like the life and the luxury worked for a couple years. They were scamming, but here's what I think changed. Gypsy, when they went to Missouri, because of all the media attention with the hurricane and Katrina, well, all of a sudden, and it was a small town and the news didn't have a lot to cover, all of a sudden, Gyp was being interviewed by news stations. Now, have any of you been interviewed? Put in the comments, have any of you been interviewed by a news anchor before? Or have you worked in the news industry? Do you have any friends that work in the industry? Because what's really weird is like when people get interviewed and they're teenagers typically, and you watch the news. Have you ever watched the news and noticed that like when teenagers are being interviewed, they get a little excited? Even if it's about nothing, like a tornado, they get this like kind of adrenaline, because the reason why is because when they're shooting like for the news, they use those big cameras, and they have filming crew, almost like when you're doing a movie. They have those big square cameras, and they have a crew holding it, pushing it. Someone's holding a microphone to your face. And it's almost like feeling like a celebrity. So imagine Gypsy when she's a teenager and she has news anchors putting a microphone up to her like she's a celebrity, like she's Michael Jackson asking what her thoughts are, like she's, Paris Hilton at the time, and she gets this adrenaline, and maybe she thought, like, I'm a princess. And then maybe, let's imagine Gypsy goes home and then her mom sees her on TV, her friends, the neighbors see her on TV, and they're like, oh my gosh, I saw you on TV. That was so cool. So imagine that happens to you when you're a teenager. And then imagine that because you like that, you tell your mom, I want to be on the news more. I like being on camera. I like being on TV. And you were like, you want to be famous. You want to be a celebrity. You want to be on TV. And your mom's like, okay, I'll apply at more scams that give us media access since you like being on TV. You like having your picture taken. You like being on television. This was Gypsy's way of like becoming a celebrity, but like on a level where it was easy and they made money doing it. So, and she didn't have to have any acting experience, right? So they would do scams. Have you noticed that all the scams they did after she was like 16, 17 were all like, when she's over the age of 15, basically from then on, most of the scams they pulled had media coverage. I think that's no coincidence, because here's the thing when you're scamming, and I don't know why I know these things, but like, I just know, like, you probably know this too. If someone's scamming, you put yourself in their shoes. If someone's scamming, they're going to be like hiding. They're going to be not wanting to be seen. If anything, they're going to try to make sure their scam isn't found out. It's not publicized. It's not on the news. It's not on the paper. It's definitely not on television. There are those scam artists who like hide in plain sight, but usually scam artists, if they're pulling off like big fraud where money's involved, they like to do it in quiet corners where it's less noticeable. There's less of a trail where you can do it more often. So you have to wonder, why would Dee risk doing it less often, but do it for places with more media coverage? Well, I think it's because now Gyp wanted something other than a life of luxury. She already had a life of luxury and traveling to Florida for a month at a time, going to Disney every year or every other year, right? And traveling to Cape Cod and all this stuff. What did she want now? I think she wanted to be on TV because she loved it. And so, and her mom started carrying that camera everywhere. I think Gyp just really loved having her picture taken, having people put her on a stage, asking her questions, clapping for her, giving her a microphone, treating her like a celebrity. And you will see this with any person who becomes a celebrity. If they're not grounded to begin with, they get into the industry and they're not already a grounded person, the ego gets to them. And that's even if they're like level-headed. Being a celebrity carries a sort of like adrenaline with it, and people can become addicted to it. And you see this with almost everyone who becomes famous. The fame becomes an addiction. The views become an addiction. The being on TV becomes an addiction. And almost every person in the celeb world has to get therapy to avoid becoming addicted to it, to where if they don't get it, it ruins their life, right? Or their marriages or their relationships. So imagine Gyp, though. She not only isn't a real celeb, but no one's helping her avoid the ego. If anything, they're just giving her a bigger ego. And this is why her ego is 1 billion times bigger than J-Lo's will ever be. Because I really do think that she always wanted to be a celeb. After she got her first taste of being on TV a couple times, and the neighbors kept saying, oh, I saw you, or she'd go to one and be like, oh, I saw you on TV, and it's a small town. They all know who she is. I think she wanted more of that, but it was dying down. See, they had already gone to all these scams that had media attention, media coverage, and it was dying down, and Dee was getting sick. And I think Dee, I kept wondering to myself, why did Dee spend such a ridiculous amount of money on this last Disney trip? Because remember, typically they would go to Disney for a month, and they would go to Disney World, and it would be for a month at a time. they'd stay in a resort for a month and then go there hours a day for like 4 weeks. Why instead, just a few weeks before she's unalived, why did she instead do just a 1 or 2 day thing at Disney, but hook up and become besties with the celebrity coordinator? And I think this is all because she's scamming people in the media who have media coverage so that Gypsy can be on television. But as that dies down and Dee's getting sick, Gypsy wants to be on TV again, and she wants to be a celeb again. And Dee wants her daughter to feel like a celebrity, but her options are limited. She's not like a Kim K, you know what I mean? And she's not like an actress or really good at singing. And so she doesn't have like that skill of like working hard too is a thing Gyp doesn't like to do. And actresses work really hard, but she wants to be on TV. So what I think happened is Dee specifically went to Disney and tried to become best friends with the celebrity coordinator at Disney. So the person who handles all the celebs, all the events that celebs do at Disney, and then also is the person that shuts down Disney for famous people to come and have it all to themselves. So what I think happened is Dee had to, all of these things that are done for celebs are done via contract. So Dee becomes besties. She slowly becomes closer to the coordinator by having Gyp meet more and more famous people. And maybe Dee's hoping that by Gypsy meeting famous people and making connections in the celeb world, that somehow Gyp will get a role, right? And be on TV again, be in the news again. Maybe, get an acting role or get some commercial or something, right? Because maybe Gyp really now all she wants is to be on TV. Let's imagine that Dee tries her best, but they meet celebrities and nothing really comes out of it, right? Aside from just some money. And that's not what Gyp really wants anymore, right? She wants to be on TV. So imagine Dee is like, well, I'm getting sicker. The only thing I can do is spend a lot of our savings and give Gypsy the celebrity experience and give her a special night where she experiences what it's like to be a real celebrity. So they plan this. They call the Disney coordinator. They set it up. They sign a contract. And they set a date for Disney to be shut down just for Disney, like just for Gypsy to go there. So imagine they tell all the other customers, you can't go to Disney on this specific date and time. We're going to close off the whole area. And the only celeb who's going to be there is Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Except she's not a celeb yet. But they're able to do this because now Dee's best friends with the celeb coordinator. And maybe they do it on a weekday. Maybe they do it on a night where it's not a big sale night. But even if you do it on the slowest night of the year, something like that is going to cost at least $100,000 at the very minimum. And 30% of that is due up front upon scheduling it. You see, I know this because I used to do this. I used to schedule things and put these kind of things together. So imagine that, not for Disney, but for other big people. So imagine that Gypsy goes to Disney, is treated like a celeb. Her and her friends have the whole park to themselves. They are the famous people. For one night, they get to be treated like they're the Kardashians. And no one else but them gets to be at the park. They can do whatever they want. They can run up and down the street, yelling and screaming at Disney, and no one's going to bother them. They can get ice cream at all the shops. They can eat at the restaurant, eat as much food as they want. It's all for them for however many hours Dee paid for. But Dee would have had to, at the very least, even with a friend and family discount, there would have had to be a contract signed upon scheduling it and 30% down of whatever the amount was negotiated, which for Dee would be around 20 to 30K at the very least. That's if they gave it to her for pennies and they were going to risk their job over it. You see, when people have celeb coordinators and event planners, their job is to make money for the park, to make money for Disney. So if a celeb is coming through, like the Kardashians, they're going to spend, at least $100,000 just on the deposit. And they're going to spend way more on that just on the lunch and the dinners at these restaurants. They're going to spend at least upwards of almost $1 million for like a whole park of Disney to themselves and Magic Kingdom and all that. But Gypsy was able to get this at a very discounted rate, guys. I'm trying to explain, like, even if she got it on a food stamps rate, it would still be $30,000 up front upon scheduling it. That's why only celebs do these things, or billionaires, because it's ridiculously expensive. Like, no high privileged elite class is going to be able to afford this. No one right now making $500,000 a year is going to be able to afford this unless they're spending their entire savings. And what I think is Dee probably maxed out her credit cards. Maybe Dee pulled out whatever they had in the savings and used it. She wanted Gyp to feel like a celeb. But then they're at the Disney thing for those 1 or 2 days, and the park's closed down for Gypsy. And then Dee has to get rushed to the ER, and she's got like 13 kidney stones. And so now it's hit her that not only did she try giving her this one last time as a celeb, but the gig's over. She's not going to be able to help Gyp feel like a celeb anymore. And this is why I think Gyp continues to film herself. Even right now when she goes to Universal Studios, no one's noticing who she is. But she's filming herself on camera almost the entire time. Because she wants to feel like a celeb, and she's going to cling to that as long as she can. And she'll do anything for it, guys. In my opinion, whatever was supposed to happen the night of June 9th and whatever she planned, I think the real reason she did it was because she wanted to be on TV again. Because even if cops had bought her story of her being kidnapped, she would have made the news again. She would have been a survivor. And who knows if Nick didn't make it out that night, if Gyp would have just plopped back in her wheelchair and said, "There's no way I could have done it. I'm in a wheelchair. Like, someone came in and did all this." I mean, her victim story bought her only 8 years, right? So it's very possible that she thought she wasn't even going to go to jail at all, and that she was going to get news coverage. And even though she did go to jail, she did get news coverage, guys. Her plan worked. It got her back on TV again. You see, I think she knew that it had to be gruesome. It couldn't just be her mom dying in her sleep, or her mom, taking too many sleeping pills. It had to be something like horrendous for it to make the news, and for it to make the news over many counties and even many states, and for her to be the sensation that the Lifetime producer Melissa Moore is pushing now on the media. Now, I'm going to give Melissa Moore the benefit of the doubt. You see, Melissa Moore, her dad was an SK, right? The happy face. And he unalived 8 women. And I think that she really loved her dad. Maybe the dad was nice to her because she was a child and it didn't fit the MO, right? Maybe she saw her dad as a good dad. And maybe her brain, because human brains sometimes have a hard time making connections that are shocking. And maybe deep down, even now, she thinks there's no way my dad, I know my dad did this logically, but there must have been some good in my dad. And there must have been a logical reason. Subconsciously, I think she's thinking there must be a logical reason why he did what he did. And so when she sees Gypsy, if you were Melissa Moore's psychologist, you're going to explain that the reason why she's clinging to Gypsy the way she is because she's really reliving the fact that she wants her dad to be an innocent SK, or to be an SK that really does have a heart and wasn't as cold and dark as he really actually was. You see, I think Melissa Moore wants to believe that deep down her dad really wasn't this terrible guy. Maybe he had mental illness, or maybe I think she really wants to believe that not all SKs are just, not human or loving, we're not all capable of just darkness. And maybe she wanted to believe that her dad could do good things too. And so she sees Gypsy, and I think in Gypsy she sees her dad. And so she's like, okay, I think subconsciously Melissa Moore is like, there must be a logical reason why Gypsy did what she did. And because her brain can't make that connection with her dad even now, she's still so shocked by it. She can't come to terms with it. That she kind of uses Gyp as a coping mechanism to tell herself that, see, not all people who do these horrendous things are evil. Does that make sense? I think Melissa Moore is pushing Gyp, but it's really a coping mechanism for what she has to face with every day, knowing her dad is this person. It's her way of telling herself she's not a monster, is by pushing Gypsy Rose on the media and telling us Gypsy's had a reason for it. Gypsy's not this person. Gypsy was a victim. It's like her way of relieving herself. And Melissa Moore needs a psychology for this. But there's no reason, even if you can't come to terms, I'm just giving her the benefit of the doubt and grace here, because I think that's what she's struggling with mentally. And that's why subconsciously she's pushing Gypsy Rose. But she has to understand that in this specific case, she may have wanted to make herself feel better about this, but instead she's helping a person who's probably even more cold than the one she's trying to come to terms with. Because matricide, unaliving your mom, is way more rare than what her dad did. It's even on a whole nother level of society antisocial norms and going against even nature, because we all have some kind of grace towards the people who gave us life, especially when that person did their best to give us everything. So there's no excuse. Melissa Moore needs to stop pushing Gypsy Rose on everyone, and Melissa Moore needs to come to the terms with the fact that Gypsy Rose did what she did, and there was no reason for it aside that she wanted, in my opinion, wanted to be on TV again. In my opinion, Gypsy did it because she wanted to be on TV again. And she planned it. And this is why I think that she did that in the Walmart parking lot. I think her first attempt, when she used the pew thing and did it 10 times with the BB at her mom in a Walmart parking lot, I think it's because she was going to sit back in her chair. Her mom was going to unalive, and she was going to sit back in her wheelchair and be like, oh, we were robbed. And it would make the news. And she would be a survivor. And she would be a celeb again, at least for a little while. And maybe she could build notoriety from that. But you see, that plan didn't work. And so then she planned an even horrendous that would give her even more media coverage. And I think that after this whole Disney thing that even makes Gypsy feel like a celebrity, rather than quenching her thirst for wanting to be a celeb, I think it made her even more thirsty. Because now Gypsy wasn't only a pretend celebrity, it's like she was a real celebrity. This was the first and only time Gypsy was treated like a real celebrity, was the descheduling Gypsies to have the Disney shut down for her and to be a real celeb for one night, for one special night. Guys, when we cover Melissa Moore, we need to understand maybe why Melissa Moore is doing this. And I think it's a coping mechanism. And, let's give her a little bit of grace. But we need to make it very clear that even though that might be her reasoning, she needs to stop frauding and lying about Nick Godejohn's past, about his condition, and pushing a fake agenda for Gypsy. Because people like Gypsy, when her fame starts dying out and her celeb status starts going away, and she goes to Universal Studios, no one notices her. She holds up a camera the whole time to feel seen on camera. And they're walking by making lots of noise, and no one is going up to her and asking for a signature, and she's surrounded by people. It's already dying down. But when it dies down to the point that TMZ is not covering her story, Gypsy's going to do something drastic. this is her MO. This is what she's going to do. This is just her pattern and her behavior, in my opinion. So will she be off parole when she does? But when that does happen, mark my words, you heard it from me first. When her celebrity status winds down and she's not on TV as much, she's not on TMZ anymore, having money for her is not enough. Ken needs to understand this. Christy needs to understand this. Rod definitely needs to understand this. If she could get rid of her mom, she can get rid of her dad too. Have a good night, guys. Ciao.